decide what economy will be. It's not the other way around. And there is a kind of method in this madness, and that is related again. As Arsalan was referring to the role of the US, in 1989, we had a transition from the military regime to a civilian government, and Benazir Bhutto came to power. But before the election took place, 2 days before the election, we had a caretaker government. And we had a caretaker government which was incompatible because under our constitution, you have to have a prime minister in the caretaker government. But we had a chief of army staff who could not become the prime minister, who did not allow the appointment of the caretaker prime minister. So General Ashton Bey was running the government as chief of army staff. And this caretaker government went and entered into a structural adjustment agreement with the IMF 2 days before the election in November 1980. Then the elections were held. Benazir's party didn't have a single majority. So she, along with her husband, was summoned to the Chief of Army Staff House. They paid a visit there and stayed there again to form the government. And then they were invited the next day, where they were interviewed by what is known as establishment in Pakistan. So Chief of Army Staff, a few senior bureaucrats, their wives, they were all sitting, and these two were sitting in front of them. And they were told who will be the foreign minister in that government. They will have to continue with the structural adjustment program that had been agreed. Who will be the finance minister? So they agreed to all the terms and conditions that foreign policy will be controlled by the military, especially relation between Pakistan and the US and between Pakistan and India will be directly under the military establishment. So they had to agree to everything. So they formed the government. Right? And then, of course, they had to put that structured program into practice, which entailed large-scale privatization, deregulation of the labor market, and liberalization of trade. So, in that time, this, in the labor, the so-called contract system had been introduced at large scale, which is like, it sounds like workers will have a contract, but these are workers who have no employment contract. They are recruited through so-called contractors. Okay, so over 70% workers in industries are then recruited through that method, so they are not direct employees of the principal employer, and they are deprived of all the basic rights, including the right to form an association. And we were opposing that and mobilizing around that. So one day we got a call from the US Embassy in Islamabad saying that some of our officers will come and want to see you people. So we said, okay, you run this country, so nobody can say no to you. So come whenever you feel like. So they came to our trade union office. And their main theme was that if you really want Pakistani economy to take off, you need foreign investment. But if you continue to oppose this contract system, there will be no foreign investment coming to Pakistan. So the choice is yours. So he said, well, your threat is well taken. And we can still continue to do what we have to do. But there is a small issue of Pakistan has a constitution, and there is an article in that constitution which says every citizen has the right to form association and union of their own choice. So will you kindly tell this government to amend the constitution, remove this article from the constitution? At least then we know we don't have a right, as long as we have the right. So then they said, well, but you see, we don't interfere in other countries' internal affairs. So the kind of, micromanagement that goes in Pakistan, that is, if you look at what exactly is the nature of the Pakistani state, it is essentially a continuation of the colonial state. Then when you look at governance and good governance, I personally don't like these terminologies. It's either democracy or no democracy. This whole governance means, you can have very good governance under dictatorship. Under a colonial rule, I think we had very good governance during the British period. If you meet with people who
Under
have...
Mussolini, the train ran on time.
We say in Germany. So, that, if it is, efficiency, etc., it's not necessarily democracy. And when we talk about rights, then you have to link it to a democratic state, democratic institutions, but foremost, the fundamental rights for the ordinary. So now, there is the problem which is inherent in the creation of this state. Because it refuses to transform to a democratic state. Because it has, democratization has very serious implications, of course, for the ordinary people, but for not only the economic structures, but the structures of the state. You cannot have the kind of army you have in Pakistan in any democratic state. These are two mutually exclusive constructs. You cannot have the kind of bureaucracy that you have in any democratic state. They have to change. And they have to change to their own detriment. Now that is something very difficult to happen. Because under any such situation, people had to be forced to change or quit. So if you look at all the anti-colonial struggles, whether peaceful or violent, the existing structures were forced into change.
And that never happened.
It never happened, it cannot happen in the kind of state